There are moments in life when a single decision changes everything. One conversation, one signature, one goodbye, and years later, when the truth finally comes to light, all that's left is a question that can never truly be answered. What would have happened if that person had simply stayed? In the fall of 2014, a man named Ethan Carter walked out of a modest apartment in Ohio, carrying 2 suitcases and a belief that he was finally moving toward the life he deserved. He left behind his wife, Sarah Morgan, a woman he described as kind but ordinary, loving but unambitious, loyal but unable to help him reach the future he wanted. As Ethan stepped into the parking lot that afternoon, he never looked back. What he didn't know was that the woman standing silently in that apartment doorway was only months away from learning a secret that would completely transform her life. A secret worth more money than Ethan could earn in 10 lifetimes. A secret hidden for decades. And when he finally discovered the truth, it would be far too late. For years, Ethan would tell people he had no regrets. He said he had followed his heart. He said life was too short to settle. He said everyone deserved a second chance at happiness. The story sounded convincing. Friends accepted it. Coworkers nodded in agreement. Even strangers who heard pieces of the story often believed he had simply fallen out of love. But stories become dangerous when only one side is told. Because while Ethan was busy explaining why he left, Sarah was living through the consequences. She wasn't just losing a husband. She was losing the future she thought they had built together. The plans, the promises, the years invested in someone she trusted completely. Yet what makes this story extraordinary isn't the betrayal itself. Sadly, betrayals happen every day. What makes this story unforgettable is what happened afterward. Because the woman Ethan viewed as unsuccessful would eventually become one of the most influential business figures in her state. The wife he dismissed as insignificant would end up controlling assets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And the husband who walked away believing he had upgraded his life would spend years wondering how he had gotten everything so wrong. Before we go deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand how everything unraveled, we need to go back to the beginning. Long before the money, long before the regret, long before Ethan found himself standing across the street staring at a woman he barely recognized. Back when life seemed simple. Back when both of them believed they were building something that would last forever. Sarah Morgan grew up in a quiet town where people knew each other's names, and where success wasn't measured by luxury cars or expensive homes. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, checked on neighbors, and volunteered whenever someone needed help. Friends often described her as dependable. She wasn't loud. She wasn't attention-seeking. She didn't walk into a room expecting everyone to notice her. But those who knew her well understood something important. Sarah had a calm strength that rarely appeared on the surface. The kind of strength people often overlook until life puts it to the test. Ethan Carter was different. He had always wanted more. More money, more recognition, more opportunities, more proof that he was succeeding. Even as a teenager, he dreamed about escaping small-town life and becoming someone people admired. There was nothing wrong with ambition. In many ways, ambition was one of Ethan's best qualities. It pushed him to work hard and pursue opportunities others ignored. But over time, ambition slowly transformed into dissatisfaction. Instead of appreciating progress, he focused on what he didn't have. Instead of celebrating achievements, he compared himself to people who seemed further ahead. And comparison has a way of turning gratitude into frustration. When Ethan met Sarah in his 20s, her steady nature balanced his restless personality. She grounded him. She reassured him. She believed in him even when he doubted himself. For a while, that was enough. For a while, love felt stronger than any obstacle waiting ahead. The first years of marriage were far from glamorous. They rented a small apartment. They budgeted carefully. They postponed vacations. They worked long hours and counted every dollar. Yet despite the challenges, Sarah remained optimistic. She believed difficult seasons eventually passed. She believed hard work would create opportunities. Most importantly, she believed they were a team. Ethan often agreed, at least in the beginning. But as the years passed, cracks started forming beneath the surface. Friends bought larger homes. Former classmates launched successful businesses. Social media became a daily reminder of lifestyles Ethan wanted but didn't have. Little by little, Frustration replaced contentment. Conversations about dreams turned into arguments about money. Plans turned into complaints. And without realizing it, Ethan began associating his disappointments with the person closest to him, Sarah. Then, one evening, a message appeared on Ethan's phone. A name he hadn't thought about in years. Rebecca Hayes, his high school sweetheart. The girl he once imagined marrying. The relationship that ended when they were young and heading in different directions. At first, it seemed harmless. A simple conversation. A quick exchange of memories. A chance to reconnect with someone from the past. But some doors, once reopened, have consequences nobody anticipates. And before long, Ethan found himself looking backward instead of forward. He started wondering whether Rebecca represented the life he should have had. Whether reconnecting with her was fate giving him another chance. Whether the future he wanted had been waiting for him all along. At first, Ethan told himself there was nothing unusual about the conversations. Rebecca lived several states away, and their messages seemed harmless enough. They talked about old teachers, forgotten classmates, football games, and memories from a time when life felt simpler. Sarah knew they had reconnected. Ethan never hid that fact. In truth, he didn't think he needed to. The danger wasn't in the messages themselves. The danger was in how they made him feel. Every conversation with Rebecca seemed to transport him back to a version of himself that existed before bills, responsibilities, and disappointments. She remembered the ambitious young man who believed he would conquer the world. She spoke to him as though those dreams were still within reach. And after years of feeling stuck, Ethan found that attention difficult to resist. Meanwhile, Sarah continued working long hours, helping manage household expenses and supporting Ethan's latest business ideas. She had no idea that while she was focused on building a future, her husband was becoming increasingly fascinated with a version of the past. Months passed, and the conversations became more frequent. Rebecca had recently gone through a divorce. She spoke openly about the mistakes she believed she had made. She talked about regret, missed opportunities, roads not taken. Sometimes she joked that perhaps they had been too young when they ended things years ago. Sometimes she wondered aloud what life would have looked like if they had stayed together. Those questions lingered in Ethan's mind long after the conversations ended. The more dissatisfied he became with his own circumstances, the more appealing those hypothetical scenarios appeared. He began comparing reality to fantasy, and reality almost never wins that comparison. Sarah noticed changes in him. He seemed distracted, less patient, less engaged. When she asked what was wrong, he usually blamed work stress, financial pressure, normal concerns that many couples face. She wanted to believe him. In fact, she did believe him. Because when you trust someone completely, suspicion rarely becomes your first instinct. What Sarah didn't know was that Ethan had started creating an entirely different narrative inside his mind. He convinced himself that his struggles weren't simply the result of circumstances. He began believing that his life had somehow been limited by the choices he had made years earlier. He looked at Rebecca's social media profiles and saw photographs from luxury resorts, expensive restaurants, and beautiful homes. He assumed she was thriving. He assumed she represented success. Every image reinforced the growing belief that somewhere along the way, he had chosen the wrong path. He failed to realize that social media rarely tells the whole story. People often display victories while hiding problems. They showcase celebrations while concealing stress. Ethan wasn't seeing Rebecca's complete life. He was seeing a carefully selected highlight reel. But by then, facts mattered less than perception. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah suggested they spend the weekend visiting her mother. It wasn't an unusual request. Family had always been important to her. Ethan immediately declined. He claimed he had work to finish. The truth was that Rebecca was flying into town. It would be the first time they had seen each other in more than 20 years. As Sarah drove away alone that morning, she never imagined her marriage was approaching a point from which there would be no return. Ethan arrived at a downtown restaurant 30 minutes early. He felt nervous, excited, younger than he had in years. When Rebecca walked through the entrance, he immediately noticed how much effort she had put into maintaining the image she projected online. She was confident, stylish, charismatic. Their conversation lasted for hours. They laughed about old memories and discussed the lives they had built since high school. Yet beneath the friendly conversation was an unspoken question neither of them seemed willing to address directly. What if this wasn't just a reunion? What if it was the beginning of something else? From that day forward, the relationship accelerated. Phone calls became daily occurrences. Text messages continued late into the night. Business trips suddenly appeared on Ethan's schedule. Excuses became easier to invent. Sarah sensed distance growing between them, but every attempt to address it seemed to push Ethan further away. He became defensive whenever she asked questions. Small disagreements escalated into arguments. Issues that once seemed manageable now felt impossible to resolve. Looking back, Sarah would later realize something important. The marriage didn't collapse overnight. It weakened gradually, one decision at a time, one secret at a time, one conversation at a time. By the time the truth finally emerged, the foundation had already been damaged beyond repair. Then came the night everything changed. Sarah was folding laundry when Ethan walked into the living room and sat across from her. There was something unusual about his expression, a cold determination she had never seen before. He didn't waste time with small talk. He didn't ease into the conversation. Instead, he spoke with the certainty of someone who had already made up his mind. He said he wasn't happy. He said they wanted different things. He said they had grown apart. Sarah listened in stunned silence as years of marriage were reduced to a collection of carefully rehearsed explanations. She asked if there was someone else. Ethan hesitated for only a moment before answering. That hesitation told her everything she needed to know. The room suddenly felt smaller. The future she had imagined began slipping away before her eyes. When Ethan finally admitted that Rebecca was involved, Sarah felt a pain she would struggle to describe for years afterward. It wasn't simply heartbreak. It was the realization that while she had been fighting for the marriage, he had been building a new relationship. The person she trusted most had already begun creating a life without her. What hurt even more was the explanation that followed. Ethan claimed Rebecca understood him better. He claimed she shared his vision for the future. He claimed he needed a fresh start. Every sentence felt like another door closing. Sarah searched his face for signs of uncertainty, for hesitation, for evidence that some part of him still wanted to stay. Instead, she found conviction. He truly believed he was making the right decision. Within weeks, Ethan moved out. Friends and family were shocked. Some tried convincing him to reconsider. Others quietly sided with him. As often happens during divorces, people formed opinions based on incomplete information. Sarah didn't spend her time defending herself. She didn't launch attacks on social media. She didn't call Rebecca and demand answers. Instead, she focused on surviving each day. Some mornings felt impossible. Some nights felt even worse. She questioned everything. She replayed conversations. She searched for clues she might have missed. Yet amid all the pain, one thought kept returning. If someone can leave so easily, perhaps they were already gone long before they walked away. Several months later, the divorce became official. Ethan seemed relieved. Rebecca had moved closer, and together they began building what appeared to be the exciting new life he had always wanted. Vacations, fine dining, expensive purchases, public displays of happiness. To outsiders, it looked like a success story. A man finding love again and pursuing the future he believed he deserved. But while Ethan was celebrating his new beginning, something unexpected was happening hundreds of miles away. An attorney named Daniel Brooks had spent nearly 3 years searching for a woman named Sarah Elizabeth Whitmore. Every lead had failed. Every address had gone nowhere. Yet one morning, while reviewing old records, he discovered information that changed everything. The woman he had been trying to find wasn't missing. She had simply been living under a different name. And when Daniel finally located Sarah Morgan, he immediately understood that her life was about to change forever. What Sarah didn't know was that a secret buried decades earlier was moving steadily toward the surface. A secret connected to a powerful family she barely remembered. A secret involving wealth, inheritance, and decisions made long before she was born. And within a matter of weeks, a knock on her front door would set events into motion that would eventually leave Ethan Carter staring across a crowded city street, wondering how the woman he once dismissed had become someone the entire business world seemed to know.